planted in the wrong spot. Now you play me on your stereo. Think about it, then you let it go. Oh, 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 oh. I'm not just a victim of the route ride. Poison pumping through my cardio. Should've done it 20 years ago. Oh, fortune telling grandmother told me I'm on the right path. Living indecision, she told me I always split half of the good and bad. Living the happy sad, never count my blessings or settling on the craft. Thrilling but the feeling is fleeting and all wrong. I've been overcompensating by singing the wrong song. And I know that before long I'll be back up in the saddle and killing the King Kong. Do you feel me? Melting in the palm of your hand, knowing that I don't understand the feelings that I have. I'm so helpless, yes, helpless, baby. I've been swimming in time, growing gas until I wake up. So I stay up and I wait for you. I've been dreaming your mind, but you're not there when I wake up. So I stay up and I wait for you. Yeah. I've been bopping to the beat even though I've been in a bad mood. I could wear a bag over my head, I still got attitude. Skipping around the corner to pick up our favorite mood food. Cheesing for the gram, fuck it, I really do. You feel me? Melting in the palm of your hand, knowing that I don't understand the feelings that I have. I'm so helpless, helpless, baby. I've been swimming in time, growing gas until I wake up. So I stay up and I wait for you. I've been dreaming of mine, but you're not there when I wake up. So I stay up and pretend that I'm fine.
Hey y'all, welcome to Root Rod. I am your proud host for tonight's Scarlett Estelle Hernandez, and you are in for a night of music, panels, climate justice, and incredible people. This would not be possible without our sponsors, so we want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors. Everything that you're about to see is not possible without y'all, so thank you so much for being a part of this huge event. So let's talk about what and who tonight is about. Tonight is about the Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program. The Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program is an award-winning program that employs about 40 students to learn about accessibility, cultivating community, and how they're giving back as well as giving back to themselves. So a huge shout out to Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program and the Dykeam River Guardians, making sure that all these students are taken care of. Tonight, you can also assure that these students are taken care of by clicking that link in the chat and donating to the Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program. These are our literal world savers, y'all. So let's make sure they're also taken care of. All right, y'all, so we actually have Rubber and No Space Productions here. So they'll be taking us a little bit more about what tonight's all about and what we can expect. What's up, guys?
Hi, Scarlett.
Hi, how we doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Sweet, y'all. So talk to us a little bit about how Root Rot, the song, came about.
Yeah, so I tend to a lot of plants. I have a lot of plants at home, and I really enjoy growing things and nature in general. And so root rot is a problem you run into when you have a lot of houseplants. It's a problem you can't really see on the surface, but if you let it go for too long, it kills the whole plant. And that really translates so well to one's own experience with mental health. But in the same vein, it translates to climate change because it's something we've been doing things to our earth that we can't immediately see the results of, but if we let it go for too long, it could be absolutely detrimental to the human race. And so it was really natural for this song to result in something that was climate focused and community focused. And it was incredibly natural also to do it here at Bartram's
Hmm.
because organizations like Bartram's Garden are on the front lines fighting against climate change, especially against biodiversity loss. Community gardens are the real frontline fighters there. So happy to be supporting Bartram's and their youth internship program here. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in.
Absolutely. I mean, let's talk some goals for the event. What can we expect and what would you like to happen from this?
So our goal for tonight is to highlight creators who are incorporating climate justice and sustainability into their work, while also channeling funds to Bartram's Garden Youth Internship Programs and raising awareness for climate action initiatives. We really intended for this event to serve as an inspiration to the Philadelphia community and beyond, to really bring climate experts together and creatives to figure out how we can incorporate climate justice into our daily lives and work towards solutions of going to a more sustainable future.
I love that. I mean, and that's the goals for tonight, right? That's what's happening now. But let's talk what's next for Rubber, what's next for No Space Productions, and what can we expect?
So we are super excited to roll out a lot of really awesome content coming up. We do have a live session for our most recent single, Vitamin E.
Woo!
And it's shot and edited by Luke O'Brien, who's behind this lens right now. And yeah, we're actually in the process of kind of booking our first shows. They'll be outdoor and socially distanced, but it's just amazing to think that we are going to be playing out live again. So that's exciting.
Amazing. And what's up with No Space Productions?
So besides taking care of everything that Rubber does,
Duh.
we're excited to just continue working with different creators and helping them on their strategy and really execute their ideas, whether that be in the studio, on social media, or on stage soon. So if you are looking for a team to help you out, just hit us up in the chat. We'll have our links there, and don't worry, we don't bite.
You heard it here. They don't bite. We have an amazing night for you. So join us and support us by clicking the link in the chat to donate. And again, I'm encouraging you, 5 people. Pick the 5 people you most like. Who would be your MySpace top 8? Send this to them and let them know how they can be supporting this life-changing, climate-changing, world-changing live stream tonight.
Right. I was planted in the wrong spot. Now you play me on your stereo. Think about it, then you let it go. Oh, no, I'm not just a victim of the road ride. Poison pumping through my cardio. Should've done it 20 years ago. Oh, fortune telling grandmother told me I'm on the bright path. Living indecision, she told me I'd always split half of the good and bad. I'd live in the happy sad. Never count my blessings or settle in on the craft. Thrilling but the feeling is fleeting and all wrong. I've been overcompensating by singing the wrong song. And I know that before long I'll be back up in the saddle and killing it King Kong. Do you feel me? Melting in the palm of your hand, knowing that I don't understand the feelings that I have. I'm so helpless, yeah, helpless, baby. I've been swimming in time, growing gills until I wake up. So I stay up and I wait for you. I've been dreaming you're mine, but you're not there when I wake up. So I stay up and I wait for you. Yeah. I've been bopping to the beat even though I've been in a bad mood. I could wear a bag over my head, I still got attitude. Skipping around the corner to pick up our favorite mood food. Cheesing for the gram, fuck it, oh really do you feel me melting in the palm of your hand? Knowing that I don't understand the feelings that I have, I'm so helpless, yeah. Helpless, baby. I've been swimming in time, growing girls until I wake up. So I stay up and I wait for you. I've been dreaming you're mine, but you're not there when I wake up. So I stay up and pretend that I'm fine.
All right, y'all, let me break down where your donations to the Bartram Gardens Youth Program is really going. For $25, you will provide one student with safety gloves and masks for outdoor work. For $50, your donation will provide one student with first aid training. A $100 donation will provide one student with an at-home lesson kit and supplies. A $250 donation will provide 10 students with at-home veggie seedling starter kits. A $500 donation will provide a Zoom license for these lessons on sustainability to go virtual. A $1,000 donation will provide 10 supply and lesson kits for these students within the Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program. So if that sounds like a good deal for you, please hit that link in the chat and support the Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program in getting the supplies they deserve.
There are people who come from Florida to Bartram's Garden. There are people who come from England to Bartram's Garden. But me, growing up 5 or 6 blocks from here, never knew this existed.
Bartram's Garden is about 50 acres along the Schuylkill River. We have an extraordinary compound of historic buildings that were built in the 1700s. It's a place where people can find a little peace, a slice of beauty in nature, and right within 10 minutes of one of the biggest cities in America. The garden is named for the Bartram family that established a farm and a horticultural enterprise here.
John Bartram was the horticulturist for the King of England.
At the time of the founding of the nation, the Bartrams explored all of North America and brought back plants here to grow and propagate them.
He was known throughout the world for his plants. I mean, he was like the Michael Jordan of flowers.
There was so much interest across the world about this new nation.
Bartram's more famous outside of Philadelphia than he is here.
What the Bartrams provided was the ability to really understand the flora and fauna and the natural history of this country. This historic garden is now a bubbling, thriving community center. It's the family room of the Southwest, and I'm really proud to say that.
Amazing. exciting. I know I have a spot for Root Raw in all my favorite upcoming playlists. So before we get too deep into it, I got a question. Who sent you here? How did you find out about Root Rod? So chat, check in, drop in the chat who sent you here, tag them, because I personally just want to say thank you to them because you could have been anywhere else, but you're here with us and we love you for that. Before we get too deep into it, I also want to present a mini documentary presented by Isabel Zapata on Hudson hemp and their regenerative farming techniques. Check it out.
First and foremost, my dad is a organic farmer and has been since I was a child, and was also always growing cannabis. So cannabis in our home setting was very normal to me growing up. It doesn't mean that I wasn't affected by the stigma of it or that it felt wrong, but we were really surrounded by it, like our closets would be filled, etc. So it was a familiar thing for me.
Melanie and I were very different as children. We grew up a bit removed from the farm, although we were there all the time and we worked there in the summer. But I, quite honestly, as a child, didn't really want anything to do with it as I got older. And it still wasn't as like trendy as health has become now. So it was more embarrassing, really, as a kid, like to say that my dad was a farmer, or that's how it felt. I don't know why there was shame attached to it, but it wasn't something I was necessarily proud of until I probably was like 14.
My parents always talked about how hemp could replace plastic, how it could replace trees for paper, how it could be a building material, and how it could even be made into fuel. And as my dad has said, if Henry Ford could build a car from hemp composites and run it on hemp ethanol 100 years ago, think of all the things we could do now.
Think of cannabis as an umbrella for two things: industrial hemp and medicinal cannabis. Industrial hemp is going to be the fiber, fuel, feed part of this plant, the industrial piece. And then medicinal is actually going to include CBD hemp, because this plant is not ideal for paper, for rope, for feed, for fuel. This is a medicinal hemp plant that is grown for the flower. The legal difference between hemp and marijuana is that THC factor.
Hudson Hemp is based at Old Mud Creek Farm in Hudson, New York. We are a 2,700 acre grain farm that transitioned to an organic regenerative model in 2013, and we started growing hemp here in 2017 in rotation with the heritage grains. So we rotate all of our crops, we implement cover cropping and rotational grazing, and we also have a soil lab here where we have been monitoring the fluctuations of nitrous, carbon, and methane gases in the soil since the transition began in 2013.
The model that we are demonstrating really needs support of governmental agencies, so that these farmers who are now incentivized to use fertilizers, GMO seed, etc., are incentivized to capture carbon from the atmosphere and bring it into the soil. And that is what we need to place value on.
This is where our plant matter is stored. We have a variety of biomass. We have 7 varieties we grow. They're all a lot different in terpene profile, cannabinoid profile, look, smell, color. There's a lot of diversity in the seed that we choose. That also goes to like being resilient in how we farm, and having a little more diversity in varietals and subspecies is really important to maintain quality and maintain pest control.
The outer fibers on the outside of the plant can be stripped off, and they're long, they're very strong. These can be made into rope, high quality fabrics, strong fabrics, and really high quality paper. It can also be built into composites like carbon fibers. They can be pyrolyzed and used in batteries. The middle of the plant is called hurd, and it has cellulose, hemicellulose, lignins, and sugars. That hurd can be broken down to make ethanol. The lignins can be made into plastics, bioplastics, that are degradable and could replace petroleum as plastic. So if you can think we can replace plastic, we have a whole petroleum industry fighting against us there. And the hurd itself can just be chipped up and mixed with limestone and be a replacement for concrete. Haven't found a way to make it structural, but for certain surface concrete, floors, walls, surfaces, it's a viable replacement. And then the grain itself is a tremendously helpful source of protein, and it's full of omega-3s and lots of minerals, vitamins, and very healthy. It'd be a much healthier grain for us to be focused on than soybeans or corn.
This industry emerging really is an opportunity to shift a paradigm. Agriculture at large has been very devastating to our planet, and the whole message around hemp and cannabis to us is that plants are healing. I think a real demand could happen when we actually set up the infrastructure for processing fiber hemp, and that would create like a whole new industry. We are the ones setting that demand when we buy a cannabis product. And as a new industry, we can push the limits for that acceptance level more so than we've had the opportunity with anything in the past. Because as much as we've commodified this plant very quickly, it's not quite there yet. It's really not. We're still building systems to grow this plant. We're still innovating systems to harvest this plant. And so we have this incredible moment in time, especially with delays in regulations, to make these standards what we want them to be. So I really hope that people see that and acknowledge that, and hopefully the cannabis plant can help us get there mentally, help us kind of break these barriers for what we believe the conditions of health to be. And there's something really radical in that. So smoke dope, bro.
That was so good. I would have to say is the G-O-A-T. Get it? Cute baby goats. It's fine. I got it. But with that said, we have a quick chat check-in, y'all. Tell me about your experience with CBD. And also a quick question for everybody. Would you be more inclined to buy from a farm that already has these sustainable practices in motion? So let's think about what we're putting in our bodies and where it's coming from, y'all. With that being said, we do have a panel of incredible activists and creators here who are coming together to talk more about the sustainability and food sovereignty here in Philly. So I'll hand it over to you, Noelle. Let's check it out.
Thank you, Scarlett, and thanks to No Space Productions and Rubber for inviting us to be here today. We are excited to share our work about food sovereignty, which we'll be talking more about. We know that that may be a term that may be new to people. Quite often in the world of talking about food access or the limited amount of access people have to healthy foods, we hear terms like food insecurity, food deserts, and we're really going to be introducing a different concept, food sovereignty, which is rooted in global struggles throughout the global South and in the US, building on Black and Brown struggles, not only around food, but also land sovereignty for Black and Brown peoples and communities. So We're excited to share more about that, and we'll start with some introductions. If we can go around and each of us share our name, our organization, and the community you're representing, and what does food sovereignty mean to you? And we'll start with Ashley.
Peace, y'all. So I'm Ashley Gripper, daughter of Dawn Kipkin and Paul Gripper III. May they rest in peace. I'm a born and raised Philly John and the founder of Land-Based Johns. And our work is really to provide education and training primarily to Black women on agriculture, food sovereignty, carpentry, self-defense, and land-based living. And we do that through a lens of self and community healing. So when I think about sovereignty, it's the ability to govern and decide for ourselves, right? And sovereignty to me is about self-determination. And when I think about food sovereignty, a few things come up. Do we know what's in our food? Do we know how our food is grown? Do we know who grew it? Do we know how the plants and the soil beings were treated in the process? How were the growers and farm workers treated? Do we know how it was prepared or who prepared it and how those people who prepared it were treated? So for me, food sovereignty boils down to knowing and controlling what goes in our bodies, and also acknowledging the interdependence of all aspects and people within the food system. So I want to stress that I don't believe it's possible to even have food sovereignty without land sovereignty or without reverence of earth. And to me, there's no food sovereignty without Black liberation, without Indigenous sovereignty, or without freeing and supporting and amplifying the voices of oppressed peoples across the world. Haja.
It looks like we might have lost Haja for a second. We'll pass it to Ty.
Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Ty Holmberg. I'm the co-director of the Sankofa Community Farm down here in Southwest Philadelphia at Bartram's Garden. We are a African diasporic centered, a spiritually rooted, and an intergenerational farm. We are celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. And as I'm sitting around the nettles and the Brussels sprouts, I'm in the high tunnel, which is one part of our farm. I'm also representing, I'm one of the co-directors, but I work alongside a man named Chris Bolden Newsom, who we started the farm together. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, along with Chris and a lot of my other coworkers, I'm going to hopefully help to translate the work that we do here at Sankofa. Sankofa is a West African word from the Tree language, where Ghana is today. It comes from an Adinkra symbology, and it's actually a logo or an image of a goose who's walking forward at the same time as she's reaching over her head and picking a seed off of her back. And so the word Sankofa means to, roughly translated, to go back and get it while moving forward. And we do that, and that really symbolizes a lot of the work that we do. We are not just about growing food. The spirit with which we do the work is at the core and the fabric of our work. That shows up in all of our programming with young people and elders as well. So our main goals are around access, but it just doesn't stop there. We talk about culinary access. We talk about proximity to the food. We talk about cultural access. We are also a space for people to develop tools for self-reliance through food sovereignty. And lastly, we are a space for people to reconnect and rebuild their relationship with the land. We are specifically a place that centers African descended people and their connection to the land. And so we do that, and that shows up in all of our programming and our curriculum. So I'm excited to talk with you more today about food sovereignty. For my ideas of food sovereignty are around control of food and communities' control of food, which goes back to who is controlling it now, and understanding those systems in order to break them down and bring them back to the people that live in the community, and specifically the community that we work in, Southwest Philadelphia. So thank you again for helping me to be on this panel. Looking forward to talking more with you.
Hello, my name is Haja Glover. I'm the founder of Glover Gardens. Just to give you guys a brief history of Glover Gardens. So I graduated from the workshop school, which is a project-based high school. So instead of like doing like regular schoolwork, like working on textbooks, we did a lot of project-based work. For example, like in math class, we designed a skateboard, and there was a lot of dimensions, a lot of math into that. So and then and there was a lot of different shops. So I was able to experience engineering, auto body, auto tech, wood shop. And that's where I got a bunch of skills to how to build like how to build things. And I began to develop my confidence on how to use these power tools, such as like drills and chop saws. Um, so yeah, and then in 10th grade, I was able to have an internship at Sankofa Community Farm. And at Sankofa, we had a food justice walk. And we started in Southwest, and we walked all the way down to like 40th and Market. And we watched the community change completely. And we looked inside every supermarket to see, is there organic options? What fruits and vegetables do they have? What's the variety? And everything changed. Was there trees in the community? Is there gardens in the communities? And that opened my eyes. And I was like, well, why is in my community there aren't organic options in the market? There aren't fresh produce. Once you walk inside a grocery store, you're bombarded with snacks. So that food justice walk opened my eyes. It made me think about, okay, well, what does it mean to be sovereign? What does it mean? How can I provide my community with access to food? And the way I started that was, of course, like through Glover Gardens. I said, well, what if I can build and design and install garden beds for people's homes? And that's what I do. I build, I design the garden beds, I build them, and I install them to people so they can become sovereign.
Thank you, everyone. And my name is Noelle Warford. I'm with Urban Tree Connection, representing West Philly, the Haddington neighborhood, which is a Black working class neighborhood in Philly. And y'all created such a beautiful definition of food sovereignty. I don't really know what more I would add to it other than, y'all hit all the points. It really is about how do we reconnect to the skills of growing food, which is a part of our history as a people. And how do we do that on our own terms, particularly within Black and Brown communities, to meet the needs of our community. And we know that during this time of the pandemic, folks' needs are increasing significantly. And there's been so many failed government interventions to meet those needs. And we know that food access is just sort of like a Band-Aid, but that people really need the tools and the resources and the space to create community in a way that that allows people to be more self-determining and having more control over their own lives. And so our work at Urban Tree Connection is really about the growing of food is the tool for actually developing working class Black leadership in the neighborhood, of how do we begin to think of ourselves as people capable of governing these key cornerstones of our society, whether that's food, housing, education, the commons, et cetera, because we know to create the society that we need where everyone's needs are met, that we need to be in charge of those things. It can't just be the minority running these things, a minority group of people based on wealth and exploitation. So I love the way that, we brought different angles. I mean, Haja, you really sort of walked us through even like, the food justice tour that you did of how you see the city changing. And we know that, the ways that our neighborhoods exist is based on a deep history of that our cities aren't just like the way that they are, but it's been a lot of things that have happened over time that lead to what people have access to, the opportunities and resources people can have in their lives. So maybe you can, if we can each go around and say more about what does food sovereignty look like in your respective work, and if you're building off of a particular history, what is that building off of, and why is this work important right now? And we can just freestyle it. Y'all can jump right in.
I could get us started. Unless you want to, Haja.
Yeah, I think you can start.
So Noelle, you talked about the pandemic, and I want to share a little bit about the inspiration for land-based drawings. So much of it was around like what we were experiencing across the world with the pandemic, what we have been experiencing in this country as Black people living under oppression. And then also a lot of my personal experience with, watching my parents like be victims to systemic racism, and watching my parents struggle with food apartheid, or the impacts that had on their physical bodies, their mental health. So a lot of the work, as I started to put together land-based drawings, it was at the same time that I was reading Parable of the Sower, and then which was at the same time that protests erupted because of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and us just being exhausted with being murdered in the streets. And at the same time, my father had just passed from heart disease. So all of these things were happening, and I'm sitting here like, what does it look like for our communities to be self-determined, for our communities to be whole and healthy and well, mentally, physically, and spiritually? I really feel like Octavia Butler, and author of Parable of the Sower, kind of gave us a roadmap of a sense. So a lot of what we do at Land-Based Drawings are skills that I pulled from that book that I saw that she highlighted around like knowing how to build stuff, around, gardening and agriculture, around education, and around like spiritual connectedness, rootedness, all of those things. And I think that this all ties to my parents, because a lot of what they didn't have access to were resources that would help their minds and their bodies and their spirits heal. So at Land-Based Drawings, we deliver a series of workshops. The first workshop is called Land is at the Center, and we host a panel, an intergenerational panel of Black women spanning from age 16 to 70, talking about their connections to the land, their connections to growing food. And that really lays the foundation for the rest of the workshops that we provide. The second workshop in the series is gardening and growing. So in gardening, in self-defense. And in self-defense, we're not only talking about like being able to defend your physical body, but also what does it mean to understand the connection between your mind and your body. So we're doing somatic stuff, we're doing body mind centering. And then we're also learning about how to defend ourselves like physically, in various ways. And we see that is necessary because of how Black people are targeted by, more systemic and structural forces, but also in response to the protests, there were people who came out and just shot and killed protesters. We're seeing today, that a lot of our communities are not safe with the increased violence against Asian communities in this country. So, self-defense is really an important part of what we're doing, and an important part of self-determination. So then we have gardening and growing. We're teaching folks how to grow food. We're teaching folks, how to, in the growing portion, how to radically forgive yourself for whatever. Then we follow up with carpentry. We have a raised bed garden workshop led by Glover Gardens. And that's where, we're putting these things into practice. We're putting self-determination into practice, and we're trying to set it up so that people, we're not just like, giving out food or selling food or whatever. We're teaching you how to grow it for yourself. We're teaching you how to connect to the land and build those deeper relationships and spend time with the land. We're teaching you how to build your own, raised bed, how to work with power tools. And we're teaching you how to defend not only yourself, but also your family and your community. So all of the work that we do, all of the workshops that we deliver to our participants are really about increasing the agency of Black women in Black communities, increasing self-determination, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and like that deep emotional and spiritual healing that we all need. So that's how I envision my work connecting to food sovereignty, through this kind of lens of self-determination and spirituality.
Yes, I can go next. So the way I envision my work, I can give you guys like an example. So when I start people garden beds, a lot of times neighbors come out and be like, what's going on? What's going on? What is this? And people who haven't spoke with each other on a block, people who might have drama with each other from the neighborhood, from the block, come out and say, what's this? What you planning here? And they watch us install it. And then the neighbor, like the person who installed the garden bed, for like, I haven't spoke to that person in years. I didn't even know this person lived here on this block. And then it's like, okay, well, your garden bed is here. So it's like, are you going to be able to provide, are you going to share your produce? It's like, I'm going to share my produce with my neighbors. I'm so excited to have to be able to harvest this and share with the community. And that's what it means to me, building the communities and having people communicate through this garden bed, having people share their harvest through this garden bed. And also, also being able to provide people with the skills to build the garden beds. I don't want to be the one who always build the garden beds. I want people to have the skills to do it themselves, because that's what sovereignty is for Global Gardens, and for me. So giving people the resources to do the work themselves.
I love that. It's such a tangible example of like what that can look like. And it just reminds me so much, at Urban Tree Connection, we root our work in food sovereignty principles and also just transition, which comes out of environmental and labor movement struggles. And basically it's just, how do we move from this current economy that is rooted in exploitation and exploitive actions to use resources and people's labor to make the world kind of operate and move towards using regenerative practices that are really for the social and ecological well-being of all people in the planet. And so it makes me think about how alienated that we are, that we don't even know our neighbors, because the work that we have to do every day and the things that we have to do to survive, it keeps us from really connecting to one another. And how in a world where we envision food and land sovereignty, the connectedness is what makes makes that possible, like that it actually takes cooperation for us to build the world that we need, which is a very different way of how we learn how to operate and live through day to day in this current economy, where it's like competition and individual self, like I got to look out for myself to survive. And we just know that in a pandemic, like people are not making it alone, like they're just not doing it. And that that's why we see all these mutual aid efforts sort of emerging. And so that has really shaped and redirected the way that we do our work at Urban Tree Connection. So for many years, we had a particular way that we distributed food, but we also have a long history of working with block captains in our neighborhood. So if you're not familiar with block captains in Philly, basically it's like your neighbors vote who's like the leader on their block. It's a very democratic system, but it's also, and most people know block captains for like cleanups and block parties, but block captains are doing a lot of other things. Like they're mediating a lot of neighbor disputes. There's like all this, they're, you know, giving people food, they're doing all types of stuff. And so block captains have been really important to, our work has really been around transitioning vacant properties and making them into spaces for people to come together on, whether that's through gardening, we have a farm, and then some open park spaces. So making them, you know, community usable spaces. And all of our sites were founded by people who live in the neighborhood, particularly block captains. And so the block captains, we went to them at the beginning of last March and was like, hey, what's going on in the neighborhood? What are you seeing? And we were just learning that people were really having a hard time. You know, like people had more caregiving responsibilities. I mean, I don't have to run the list because we've all been living through it, but what is particular is that for Black folks and for other communities of colors, it's been particularly hard. And so we decided to coordinate a free distribution program together, and we delivered all the food shares to the block captains, and they recruited all the families and did direct deliveries to their homes. And so like we've just been continuing to build on that because it's become more important to us to tap into leadership that already exists in the neighborhood to really like build the infrastructure of what we hope to be like a neighborhood governed food system in Haddington, than for us to be doing the work of like distributing the food ourselves. So, I mean, for us, like I mentioned earlier, it really is about cultivating and uplifting working class Black leadership. At UTC, that's what food sovereignty means to us. In addition to like teaching people how to grow food, which we do at our farm and community gardens.
Yeah, no, well, I want to piggyback a lot of what Haja and like I hear you saying are around like the network and the network between people that happens through food and like building, and also the connection to the land. And I think, let's be real, like that connection to each other and that connection to the land is scary to the people that are in power. People in our Southwest community and in cities all over, Black and brown people have been intentionally, like history of our country is deeply invested in disconnecting the people from the land, right? It's deeply invested in also connecting people to each other. And, you know, that at the farm at Sankofa, when it really boils down to what we are about, a relationship to each other, the relationship to the land, and the relationship to spirit. And I think those are the seeds with which food sovereignty grows. That's the way to cultivate that. I mean, yeah, and I think when we envision that, we see a world where people are working together. They're growing food together. They have access to land. They have access to choose what's in their community and what's in their stores. Because, yeah, there's been an intentional, and that's why we use this word food apartheid, not food desert, right? Food desert is a white academic idea of communities that people don't live in, that they don't somehow have access to health, what they deem healthy foods, right? But that's a deeply structural decision that's based in 400 years, plus Jim Crow of enslavement, plus Jim Crow, plus the prison to pipeline, plus the public education system. We work with these young people at the farm every day, and they're geniuses. They're bright lights, right? And they've been given this education that is not okay. And so these are intentional things that are happening through lawmaking, through way things are financed, right? And that what I've seen and what we have seen here at Sankofa is that if especially young people, but if you get them on the land and the land starts to teach them, and you give them the tools with which to grow themselves and each other, and you also, like Chris, who is my co-director, teaches a new urban freedom school curriculum that goes back and understands the history of African descended people throughout time. not just history that starts and ends with slavery, but a history that is rooted in African kingdoms and resistance, right? The stories that are untold. Then you start to see the way that they walk and talk differently, right? And so I think that, food sovereignty is deeply connected to the tools with which we can provide people to be connected to the land, to be connected to each other, and connected to spirit. But then in reality, it connects back to actually being an activist when you see something is wrong. And that's the part of the reason why I do this work, right? Like, I'm a white dude from upstate New York. And I'm here because I believe that there's a lot of wrong that has been done. And I want to be a part of providing tools for people to get to a space where they can feel they can reconnect and figure out what they want to do once they have the tools. So that's part of what we do here at Sankofa. We're constantly growing in the work we're doing. We're evolving. We started out a lot about access, and we moved so much more into actually the relationships to the land and to each other. So, yeah.
Thank y'all. I know that I'm inspired on this Friday morning to hear more about the work that each of you are doing, and I'm sure the people who are hearing this are as well. And I'm wondering if y'all may have some ideas or some ways that people might be able to support more broadly food sovereignty efforts, or the work that you're doing particularly.
I think broadly understanding all of our histories. Ty talked about Sankofa, understanding, your history and your past, reaching back. I think for so many of us, we come from agricultural traditions, and many of us come from um, are direct descendants of people who benefited off of enslavement, right? So I think it's important to really understand where you come from, and use that to inform who you are and how you show up today, and the work that you support. Land-based Johns, we are entirely grant funded and funded by our community, right? And we're trying to provide these workshops for Black women and Black non-binary and trans folks. So if you're interested in supporting us, we always need in-kind donations. We do a lot of land-based living workshops where we teaching folks how to build a fire, how to filter your water, how to make shelter out of natural materials, pitch a tent, all of that. So, we could use in-kind donations. If you're interested in supporting the work financially, we have a GoFundMe page that we will share out with the group. And always volunteering is really helpful, especially as an organization trying to get started and trying to establish some gardens and support block gardens and community gardens. We could always use whatever kind of support folks are interested in offering.
Yeah, I would say, like, piggyback on what Ash said, like, I mean, in a nonprofit world, having operational dollars that are not restricted is what we as these organizations need. Like, and I know, speaking from a white person's perspective too, and a lot of my friends who are also white, sometimes people give comfortably, right? Oh, like, I can give a little bit here and there. I'm gonna ask you to give uncomfortably, right? I'm gonna ask you to not to, because the dollars that you have, right, do go really far. Like, the money goes to support young people getting paid to work on the land. For land-based Johns, I mean, please support both Glover Gardens, UTC, and land-based Johns. They're incredible organizations. They're doing, like, work that is unparalleled, and I would just say, like, find ways to not just you give, but if you have access to money, or if you know people or have networks, please share that. We live in a world, fortunately, where like, you know, we can get connected with people from all over the technological web. That is speaking from a man who had a flip phone a couple months ago. I think it's called the web. Anyway, give, but also, yeah, share, and also educate yourself, right? Like, go back and know your history, but also know other people's history. That's extremely important. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
And a way to support Glover Gardens. Glover Gardens is on Instagram. I think the handle is Glover Gardens _. And also, you know, if you're interested in growing your own food and you want to raise bed built, reach out to Haja and you know, support the work that she's trying to do of bringing food to people's backyards.
Yes, we're really excited because we're working with Haja and Sankofa to rebuild one of our community gardens, and we're really, really excited. And I would say that, like, I know that a lot of people are like forming, especially white folks are like forming study groups, and I think that that's really important. And I would say that like practice is number one, putting those things into practice, whether it's hard conversations with family members or people close to you, whether it's thinking about how to show up differently in the world, thinking about how you spend your money, supporting Black and Brown businesses. You know, we've thought about that a lot as an organization. Is like, you know, we have a limited amount of resources that are public resources, but how do we spend them, and where are we, you know, who are we partnering with, and are we making sure that we're living up to our values? So so I think that those are other ways, and it may not be food sovereignty in particular. That, you know, I think it's finding, you know, as Ashley talked about earlier, these issues are like really interconnected. So, you know, if you're supporting, you know, defund work, or if you're supporting housing security work or other types of mutual aid efforts, seeing how all those things fit together, and also being able to really support these projects that are led by Black and Brown people, because we know that our projects are the most under-resourced, but are always doing the most because we're with our people and we're addressing systemic issues, which quite often we don't find in white-led institutions and projects. So yeah. I wanna just appreciate y'all for the time we spent together. Thank you for the wisdom and that you shared, and the work that you've been doing for a long time. And for you know, this is one of the hardest moments to be showing up and doing our work, but this is like the moment, you know, like the moment you've been training for, like this is the moment. And so appreciating y'all for showing up for us and our peoples.
The Sankofa Community Farm was established about 10 years ago and has become an anchor for locally grown fresh produce for all of our neighbors.
Not only does it have a farmer's market where we provide food at a discounted price to the community, we have beds at the farm that provide access to community members to grow their own food.
In a community where fresh produce is hard to find, having a space where you can grow your own food, controlling what goes on your dinner plate, is a really empowering thing. I'm really proud to say that over the last few years, our visitation has grown to 100,000 visitors a year, and we have about 10,000 school children that come and learn and enjoy this green space. Our partnerships with the Richard Allen School, where this middle school that is right next to the garden is here doing all of their science lessons. We have a wonderful partnership with Woodland Academy. This is pre-K kids from the neighborhood are here learning about worms. They're learning about where tomatoes come from, how to grow carrots. It's wonderful. Most of our lessons are hands-on and really get all of our families, our students engaged directly with doing things that they learn and then they take back home.
Welcome to Nature ASMR with Scarlett Estelle Hernandez, live from Root Rod. Listen to this, guys. It's the sound of you donating to the Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program using the link in the chat. Isn't it gorgeous? Amazing.
Hey everyone, my name's TJ Moore. I'm a graphic designer from Philadelphia, and I've been leading the creative direction for this event, Root Rot. I just want to give a big thank you to you, our viewers. We couldn't have done this project without you. Stay listening, stay learning, and stay engaged. It's going to take all of us in order to create positive change in our world. You can find some of my work on Instagram at terrythekid_ or on my website, heytj.com. A big thank you, and I hope you enjoy the show.
What an inspiring group of people. And you, yes you, can help support the next generation of these climate justice warriors by supporting the Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program by clicking that link in the chat to donate today. While you're in the chat, why don't we talk a little bit about our learnings? What did you learn during this panel? What's something that you found surprising? What's something that you are going to incorporate in your life going forward? While that's going, next we have Julie Shaha and Laura Mirales Snow with a food demonstration. They're gonna cook up Bengali potato and cauliflower stew. But before that, we have to give a huge thank you to Riverward Produce for being able to give us the resources for this demonstration today. Take it away.
Hi everybody, my name is Julie. I am a Philly-based plant-based chef, and today I have my dear friend Daniela joining me. Hi. She is a musician. You can find her music on all platforms. Just look up Pieri. And today we're going to be making a Bengali potato and cauliflower stew that I grew up eating. There's so many different iterations of this in Indian cooking, but I'm going to teach you it how I learned it. Big thank you to Riverward's Produce in Fishtown for providing us with all these glorious vegetables. We are cooking in acknowledgement of climate change and the effect that the food we eat has on the environment, and why it's so important to understand where your food is coming from and our role in urban agriculture. And also thank you to No Space Productions for getting us involved in this project. And thank you to all of you who are supporting Bartram's Garden and community-based farming. Yeah, so let's get into the demo. So we're gonna start by prepping all of our ingredients so that the cooking process is super smooth. We're gonna wash all of our vegetables, chop, prep, measure, everything. So now that everything is washed and ready, we're gonna get into breaking down the vegetables and prepping them for cooking. So we're gonna start with the cauliflower, which is an awesome winter veggie. And it really adds a lot to this dish because it just makes it so hearty. We're gonna be using about half of one cauliflower. Also for reference, you can cook these. I'm gonna be putting them aside and not cooking them today, but you totally can cook these. So pretty much, here, I'll give you this half. We're gonna be breaking off the florets from the cauliflower and putting them into a little bowl, and we want them to all be relatively the same size so that they cook at the same speed once they're in our pan. Yeah, so you can just break them into little pieces. The other main ingredient in this dish is the potato, and so we're gonna be cutting that up now into cubes. So I can, cutting it down the middle, and then I'm gonna put it on its flat side and cut it down the middle again. Yeah, exactly. So I'm cutting the potatoes into pieces just about this big, about 1 inch either way, and making sure that they're all pretty much the same again so that they cook at the same speed.
And then you just leave them like that? Mm-hmm. Or do you chop them again?
No, I just like that is perfect. So next we're gonna be preparing all the aromatics. So I'm gonna be cutting up onion, grating garlic, fresh garlic and ginger, but you can also use ginger powder and garlic powder. The onion I'm gonna be cutting into slices. It doesn't really matter what size. A quick tip is to put your onion in the fridge a little while before you start cutting into it, because I've found that I'm less likely to cry my eyes out while I'm cutting the onion if it's chilled. So try it out, let me know if it works. Our next step is going to be preparing the garlic and ginger, which are both very important flavors in this dish. Like I said, you can totally use powdered versions, but I like to use fresh when I can get my hands on it. So what I'm gonna have you do is break off, well, this is like a 1 to 2 inch piece, and you're pretty much just gonna grate it against here. Okay. And it should come out nice and like fine. This? Yeah. You're just gonna do it all the way to the bottom of this piece, and then we'll use all of that. Okay. And this microplane is nice just because if you flip it over, it's like collecting all of it. So then you're not losing it. Or also sometimes when you try to chop ginger, I feel like you get caught up on the stringy bits. So that's why I really like using a microplane.
And then you just like pick it and like put it in there.
And as for the garlic, I'm gonna be cutting the garlic into slices. So I'm just gonna chop some of this up while Daniela grates the ginger. While Daniela finishes that up, I am gonna half and then quarter these tomatoes for the stew. They're gonna add a really nice acidy and sweet flavor. Pretty much cut it in half, cut it into quarters, and then cutting those into similar chunks to the potatoes. Everything is very similar in size because it's all going in one pot. And we're just about ready to move over to the stove. We're gonna be serving this stew over rice. So before I even get to cooking the stew, I'm putting on about 2 cups of rice so that it's done at the same time as the stew. I'm using just a pretty generic long grain jasmine rice, and I like to do a 2 to 2 ratio. So I'll put 2 cups, for 2 cups of rice, I'll put 4 cups of water. And I make sure to give it a really good rinse before I put it on the stove. So I'm just gonna put a pinch of salt into it.
Do you usually measure with your hands?
Yeah, I just do like just a hefty like 4 finger pinch. Okay, this is good to go on the stove and it'll cook for about 20 minutes and we'll start the stew. I'm starting in a cast iron which conducts heat really well, so even though I'm starting on a higher heat and then lowering it, the pan's gonna stay pretty warm. The oil's warm now, and I'm gonna be adding in my chopped onion and also some of my spices so that they can bloom while the onion is also cooking. So I'm adding in about a half a teaspoon of turmeric, a 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground red chili powder, a full teaspoon of garam masala, which is just it's like the 5 spice of Indian cooking, and a whole teaspoon of cumin seeds. And I'm just gonna mix that up, make sure it's not burning, and the onion is gonna help it not burn. So the onions are cooked down a little bit, and I'm gonna add in my potato because it's gonna take a little bit longer than the cauliflower. Now I'm gonna be adding in my half a head of cauliflower so that it also has enough time to cook. And I'm gonna mix it really well and make sure it's covered in all the spices. And after about another 2 or 3 minutes of this cooking, I'm gonna add tomatoes, mix it really well, and then cover it with water and a lid and let it simmer for the remainder of the time. And let everything emulsify in the pot and get really delicious. So while everything finishes simmering on the stove, we're gonna be preparing a little bit of a salad so that we have something fresh to eat alongside the rice and the stew, just because it's super hearty. I'm gonna be making a slaw with some cabbage, and then also have some fresh cucumber and tomato and cilantro. So I'm gonna have Daniela add about half of a lemon into the salad, and a trick is to roll it in your palm with your hand, just to get the juices flowing so that it's extra juicy, because sometimes citrus won't release its wonders for us. So yeah, I'm gonna have you cut that in half. And then you can squeeze half of it in here. And I'm gonna add about half of the cilantro. And add just a splash of olive oil. So now that everything is cooked and ready, we are getting ready to serve it up. I'm gonna top it with some cilantro, and we're gonna serve it over rice and with the salad. So why don't we grab our...
Damn, it smells so good.
I know. I'm gonna put some cilantro over this stew just to brighten it up. And also, you can omit the cilantro or you can go even harder than I did. Just depends on your preference. So you can eat this in a bowl, you can eat it on a plate, you can eat it in a Tupperware for lunch, but it's totally up to you. I just like eating it with rice so that I have something to really soak up all the goodness. Just gonna put some salad on the side of it too. Make sure I have a little bit of everything. So vibrant. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope this meal and this recipe comes in handy and that you make it for yourself and your loved ones.
I've been pent up and feeling like boiling over. Tail wagging the dog.
That looked so good, didn't it? I know I will be personally planning my trip to River Wards this week. And now here's a quick chat check-in, y'all. What are some of your favorite spring recipes? Share it in the chat, share some gems, and let's get something yummy going. Before we get too deep into this, y'all, we have a super special performance coming up next. We have Joey Cathos and Jacqueline Constance here as Gentle Johns. They came together in this experimental soundscape that paints a sonic picture of freedom and identity through melodic synths and running kick drums. Please help me welcome Gentle Johns.
Yeah. Hello. Check. Check. Hey. Yo, what's up, Joey? What's up, Jack? How you feeling? You know what? I'm all right. Yeah? I can't complain too much. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So real quick, one more time. I'm Jacqueline Constance. I'm Joey Cathos. And we are Gentle Johns. Yeah, man. So y'all gonna get some dope sounds, dope frequencies, vibrations. We really want to take this and we want to inspect the soul. You know what I'm saying? It's not just about all the songs you hear from us solo, but we really want to come together and share something unique. He said that's okay. Yeah. So you're gonna hear me, Jack, on the synths, and I'm gonna be laying it down on the beat. And y'all just go rock out with us. We're gonna have a good time today. Yeah. So this song that y'all hear right now is called You're a Star. It's actually available right now on Bandcamp. Gentle Jones Volume 1 and 2 available right now. But yeah, we're gonna keep this thing going. Yeah. Ready? Yeah, ready. No. yeah, yeah, da, 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 oh, ha, ha, ah, no, no, yeah, this your vibey, right?
Yeah, so it's crazy because like our solo music is real high energy, but when we come together, we just like create a vibe. You know what I'm saying? Man. So we gonna keep going on with this vibe if y'all don't mind. You know what I'm saying? If it's okay. And again, this track is called You're a Star, available now on Bandcamp, Gentle Jones.
So we'd be remiss if we didn't give it a little solo action real quick. So, real quick. This is my single that's out now on all streaming platforms. It's called Carl Thomas.
Let's go.
I hope you like it, yeah, yeah. I hope you like it, yeah, yeah. Baby, you could lie, but you told me 1,000 times that you would love me forever. You can try all that you want to keep going with this front like you still want to be together. Got me emotional and I can't let go. I am trying to hold on. Just say goodbye, good day, good night. You'll be alright. This is what you wanted, be a man and own it, yeah. Oh, this love was rental, really all that simple. You don't wanna with me, oh, yeah, yeah.
Talk to him, Jack. Hey, hey. Talk to him, Jack.
Can I talk real quick?
Hey.
One time, for the one time?
Hey, Jack Khan, let's go.
You got me open, got me sipping, leaning on emotions, trying to figure out what you wanted. Time is being wasted cause you can't face it. I can walk away now knowing that I was the shit you was boring, cause you didn't know what you was holding. A queen on some king shit, that hand was amazing. Got you emotional and you can't let go. I am trying to hold on. Say goodbye, good day, good night. You'll be alright. This is what you wanted, be a man and own it, yeah. This love was rental, really all that simple. You don't wanna fuck with me. Baby, you could lie, but you told me 1,000 times that you would love me forever. You can try all that you want to keep going with this front like you still want to be together. Baby, you could lie, but you told me 1,000 times that you would love me forever. You can try all that you want to keep going with this front like you still want to be together. Together, together. Yeah.
Let's go, Jack.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Give it up for Jacqueline Constance, y'all. That is one of my favorite songs. So we're just gonna switch gear into a solo song of mine. Again, my name is Joey Cathos. This song is called Pave the Way. And we actually gonna invite my homegirl Stevie up.
Yes, Stevie's real cute. She real cute, okay?
All right, so let's get a little check on this drum quick. Check, check, check. Check, check. All right.
Let's go, Joey.
Mama done work 4 jobs. I ain't about to be a new slave. I ain't. That's why I go so hard. 9 to 5, oh my gosh, I can't. I'm just gonna take my time. I'm just gonna live my life. I pray that I pave the way. Pray that I pave the way. Yeah. Pray I pave the way. Pray I pave the way. 'Cause mama don't work for a job. I ain't about to be a new slave now.
Talk to him.
What does it take to be great in the world full with hate? They choose to vibe and they can monetize the things we create. With food for thought, will leave you hungry with some shit on your plate. Like you caught up in the system and you just can't escape. I know the life. I lived it well. Me, mom, pops, yeah, we been through hell. And people judge us, only time will tell. If we leveled up to reach to the higher self, yeah. I got the light, hold it tight, that's a true glow. It ain't no price for my life, that's what I know. And it's my right to ignite, that's the true code. Streets hot, cause the youth feeling too old. I feel like I could change this head, misplace my anguish, switch the language, added up my patience so I could make a shift and be the change I wanna see. Cause kids looking up to me like, mama done work for a job. I ain't about to be a new slave. Mama done work 4 jobs. I ain't about to be a new slave. That's why I go so hard. 9 to 5, oh my gosh. I'm just gonna take my time. I'm just gonna live my life. I pray, and I pray that I pave the way. I pray that I pave the way. Thank you. Paved the way.
Yeah. I like that one, Joey. Where can they find that one at?
Thank you. That is actually something that I released on the Freedom Project back in 2019. It's a passion project that's up on SoundCloud, so if you can, check that out.
I like that.
But we got something super dope surprise for you.
Yes. So
you want to introduce this one?
Yeah.
Go ahead. While
Real
I
talk.
unplug.
So to be completely honest, this is the first time Gentle Jones has actually performed in live, in public, ever. So you're getting a treat today. So this final joint is called Heartbeat. This is off our Gentle Jones Volume 2 album, exclusively on Bandcamp. So, you ready, Joey?
Let's get it.
Let's go.
We gonna have some fun with this one. That's it for my sound. That's it. Just gonna keep rocking out though. Hit it with the keys.
Once again, my name is Jacqueline Constance.
It's your girl Joey Cathos.
And we are Gentle Johns. Thank you all for vibing with us tonight. Today?
Like a boy,
Tonight.
let's get it.
Peace and blessings, y'all.
Peace,
Be out
y'all.
this
Thank
thing.
you so much. Yep, that's crazy.
To me, photography and videography are just amazing outlets that allow me to connect with people and tell stories. There are so many people in this world and there's so many different visions out there, and I love using my creative tools to help people convey who they truly are and communicate their ideas. My name is Luke O'Brien. Let's create.
They were so incredible, weren't they? Well, we actually have Andrew from Rubberback here to help us introduce the next panel. So we have people from all around the world joining us, right?
Yeah, so we have 3 people from Generation Climate Europe, which is the largest network of youth-led NGOs in Europe, joining us. One of my best friends on the planet, Michelle Stitz, will be moderating. Then we have Danielle Parks from Sustaining Way, and we have another one of my dear friends, Katie Bishop from Sweet Farm. Both of those are community farms with similar models to Bartram's. So really excited to turn it over to them. Take it away, Michelle.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks to No Space Productions for having us. Good evening to everyone joining from Philadelphia or anywhere else in the United States, and cheers to all of those who decided to join in the middle of the night from Europe. I'm Michelle, and I'm the Biodiversity Coordinator at Generation Climate Europe, GCE, which is Europe's largest coalition of youth-led NGOs pushing for stronger action on environmental and climate issues in the European Union. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this Youth Climate Activist panel as part of the Root Road Climate Action Livestream event, where I have the pleasure to welcome young people from both the United States and from Europe. Today is all about highlighting creators who promote climate justice and sustainability in their work. Their commitment and that of all of us is critical in a time when we are facing a twin crisis: climate change and biodiversity loss, with more than 1 million species at risk of extinction. While it is human exploitation of nature that is causing these crises, humans are also deeply affected by them. But the sad truth is that adverse impacts of climate change and biodiversity loss are not felt equitably among people. Historically marginalized and underserved communities are disproportionately affected, which is why the issue of climate justice will be a key element in today's discussion. Now I'm really excited to introduce to you our 4 panelists today. We have Danielle Parks, who graduated with a bachelor's in philosophy and sociology, and who has engaged communities in New Jersey in food security and environmental justice efforts. She later served as a volunteer in Cameroon, where she worked with rural smallholder farmers. In her current position at the nonprofit Sustaining Way, Danielle seeks to address food apartheid and engage with community members to create a local and affordable food system. We also have Lena Prochet, who's a doctoral researcher focusing on rainforest preservation through forest communities empowerment. Lena is passionate about nature-based solutions to the ecological crisis, and she's a member of GCE's Biodiversity Working Group. She also represents GCE as the European Climate Pact Ambassador to the European Union. Roman Sila holds a master's degree in economic development and is currently working as an analyst on international energy and climate policy in Berlin. He also serves as GCE board member and coordinator of the Climate Justice Working Group. He's also engaged in one of GCE's member organizations called FIMCAP, which he, for instance, represented in Madrid at the COP25. Finally, we welcome Katie Bishop, who graduated with a bachelor's in economics and worked on permaculture farms in Costa Rica, urban gardens in Philadelphia, and also on subsistence farms in Cameroon. In her current position at Sweet Farm in California, she runs a 2-acre farm that promotes biodiversity through the use of, for instance, intercropping, cover cropping, and crop rotation. And she also implemented a pay-as-you-wish farm card in hopes of making a plant-based diet more accessible for the community. I'm very happy to have you all here today, and I would like to start with you, Katie. Can you tell us about your personal experiences in capacity building and advocacy activities on the environment and on climate change?
Yes, thank you for having me. I have had the privilege to work in many different places, and my career started in college where I became very interested with the intersection of economics and inequality. I had the privilege of working with an urban farming group where we fought for food sovereignty and to stop the gentrification and development of land that should be used to feed the people in the community. I then worked as an agricultural economist with the Peace Corps, where I learned about how colonization affected the human diet and the environmental crisis. Then I was evacuated due to COVID-19, and I worked on building an online platform that allowed people in the Pittsburgh area to have access to farm fresh foods during the pandemic. And then I moved out here to California, and I am the agricultural program manager at Sweet Farm, which is a plant-based animal sanctuary. Here I employ permaculture methods to increase biodiversity and supply food for our community.
That's very inspiring. Thank you very much, Katie. Roman, what is your personal experience with climate activism?
Yeah, actually, thanks also for having me here. I'm very glad to be able to be on this panel with so many like amazing and inspiring people. So thanks first of all for that. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think even though I've been super interested in the issue for a long time, and made my first experiences, I think actually during a time when I volunteered in rural Argentina after high school, and really saw how especially climate change impacted farmers there, because it was a very hot and dry area of the country. So they were suffering a lot from the consequences of climate change. And then at university, I think I really got into activism itself. I became president of a small NGO that we had in the city, mostly with students, but also with older people and some seniors from the community. And we focused on sustainable development, picked another topic every year, essentially, and organized thematic talks and an event series that we called the Tübingen Climate Days, which also included concerts, for example, and little other events to really make climate change accessible for everyone, even for people who weren't working with it every day. And then in collaboration with some other people from my youth organization, FimCup, I brought the issue of climate change on the agenda of the Catholic youth organization I'm working on, or I'm working with. And since then, we've really gotten into the topic. And I think it's interesting to look at because we reach, I think, some people that, you know, are not part of this green space of NGOs and organizations. And through that, we actually got engaged, actually got in touch with Nestlé, for example, some other companies who have been engaging in harmful practices. We have organized events for young people to get engaged on the topics. And especially our international umbrella organization, which is FimCup, as I already mentioned, has really started to get on the topic more as well. And I was able to represent them, for example, as you mentioned, at the COP or at the EU Youth Conference, really pushing our demands for more youth involvement and more action against climate change. And now, as you also said, I'm board member of GCE and really try to make young voices heard in regards to the climate debate and to get them involved, for example, through the climate justice report that we just published last year. Thanks.
Thank you, Roman. So many different people engaged. That's really cool to hear. Danielle, would you like to come in and tell us where your activism story starts?
Yes, well, thank you again, everyone. Similar to the other speakers, I started in college as a Bonner Community Scholar. It's a program in which you complete community service in different areas and you receive scholarship. So I started working at our campus garden, and all the produce we grew was donated to a food bank, and understanding the intersections of food, health, and the environment. And after college, I served in the Peace Corps as an agriculture extension volunteer, along with Katie. We were site mates in the same region, which was awesome. And I was interested in learning about the farming systems of the local farmers and understanding how they describe climate change without using the word climate change in terms of changes in weather patterns and how that affected their farming systems. And currently now I'm working in South Carolina. I'm originally from New Jersey, that anyone knows about New Jersey, but and I'm working at a nonprofit addressing sustainable agriculture in a way that's accessible and affordable. And I'm working on vegetable gardens and translating a lot of what we do at our site, which we also have a demonstration urban garden, translating a lot of sustainable agricultural practices or regenerative practices as was mentioned. We're talking about Katie's, a lot of the work she's doing with cover cropping, polyculture, intercropping, and making that information accessible and hands-on so that we all can, work together towards a more sustainable and equitable future.
Thanks. That's some very important insights you shared with us. Thank you for that contribution. Lena, would you like to come in and share what's your personal experience with climate activism?
Yeah, thank you. And hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here as well. And it's hard to tell about my experience after all this amazing example because my commitment is quite recent, I would say, but it's also through food. And my first focus was food waste. It wasn't directly the climate issue, but I thought, how come we lose so much food? At that time I was in the UK and I think 1/3 of the food goes to the bin. I thought that's just stupid, so let's do something about that. And there is a kind of event that's called disco soup. So disco is for the music part and you're going to understand why. And then we just go to markets and take all the leftover veggies and cook a big soup in the street, and we have some music playing on the side, so disco, and you have some information about food waste. And I did that at university and it was actually super successful. And when I was actually writing the cardboards on food waste, I realized the impact it has on the environment as well. So I started to get interested in that. Then during my master's at university, we started this veg box for students as well, because I mean, in the UK, it's very hard to have access to organic food for an affordable price. So we started that, and I think, yeah, it was step by step, small actions. And then it was more this year where also I had more time with the pandemic. So thanks to the pandemic. And it was also a wake-up call when I saw that actually the pandemic was really linked to the climate crisis. I thought, okay, I have to do something about that. And I would like to be with like-minded people, because sometimes on your own, you kind of lack the energy. And this is how I found out about GCE. And they were super welcoming. I got involved in a lot at the same time. So in the biodiversity working group, we're working on a variety of projects. Michelle, for example, we have done a podcast on deforestation and the link with the pandemic. We're also talking with policymakers and realizing that they're actually our voice matters. So I think this is super motivating as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Lena. I would have loved to try that disco soup. I didn't know that you used to do that. Thanks for sharing this experience. Maybe you would also like to delve into the next question that I would like to address to all of you, which is, do you think people in your region and country are aware about the seriousness of the unprecedented biodiversity loss we are facing and how it affects all of our lives, and as well as the kind of interlinkages with climate change, specifically you as being the Climate Pact ambassador? I don't know, maybe you have some perspectives on this.
Yeah, thank you. So when I was preparing to answer this question, I was trying to find some stats, right? And the only one I found was like 90% of Europeans see climate change as a serious problem. But when I tried to look at like biodiversity, there is no data on that. And I think that's for one reason, is that really there is a lack of connection in people's mind. And I think it would have been the same for me a few months ago. And I think, yeah, there is really this image of biodiversity being disconnected, right? We don't really realize the ecosystem services we all benefit from, the air that we breathe, or the water that we drink every day. And my hopes is that as I was mentioning earlier, really the pandemic has been demonstrated to be linked with the biodiversity crisis. And I think we all suffer from the pandemic now, so we can really relate to how it can really impact our life very strongly. So I hope this can act as a wake-up call. And I think also our role as people passionate about those topics is to make the connection easier for people to understand and how our everyday actions can impact this biodiversity in the way that we eat or that we shop, for example. And I will also say that there is really much a need to push for a connection of those topics in future policies, because it's very much in silo right now. And if we don't address both issues at the same time, it's just not gonna work out.
Thank you for these observations. Indeed, I agree. Like, we don't realize how much we benefit from nature. It's not so obvious to understand sometimes. I don't know, how does it look in the US? Danielle, would you like to start sharing a bit your experience?
Yes, I agree that overall biodiversity loss isn't maybe a huge conversation. I think it's a bigger conversation in the area where there are sustainable farmers, sustainable agricultural farmers, regenerative agriculture in that sector. And I think it's easier to see the link between climate change and biodiversity. But I think in other circles, it may not be as clear cut. And I think industrial agriculture is a huge culprit in the with respect to loss of biodiversity. If you think of monoculture, pesticide use, deforestation, excessive tilling of the soil, how that leads to loss of habitats for insects and animals, and destroys healthy soil structure for growing the food. And so I think urban agriculture, guided by natural farming principles like native planting, plants that attract pollinators, polyculture, companion planting, which can include using plants like marigold or basil to serve as natural pest repellents, and creating like food forests that mimics like the edge of forests with different tiered trees, fruit trees, and shrubs, low-lying ground cover plants. I think those are concrete ways or examples to describe and understand the importance of biodiversity, and also serves as a way to remediate it. Because if you think of biodiversity as an ecosystem, a varied, codependent, mutually beneficial ecosystem, I think we can better understand that climate change is when that system is imbalanced due to human impact. So I think we can really use sustainable agriculture, urban agriculture, to understand biodiversity loss and make it more accessible, because I think a lot of times science, the way that it's presented, can be very inaccessible. And I think that's unfortunate when it's affecting everyone.
That's a good point. And I hope that everyone who has the privilege of having a little vegetable garden in their backyard paid good attention to all these practical tips about insects and the fruit trees and so on. Thank you for this, Danielle. Roman, I'm not sure if you have a garden in your backyard and if you have the chance to apply the tips that Danielle just shared, but maybe you can like give your personal impression on this question.
Well, lucky enough, I'm actually with my parents right now. So we do have a garden here, but in my own flat in Berlin, there's just a very little balcony. Although we started growing raspberries there at least, so that's something. But I think building on what Danielle said, I think that the awareness in Germany is actually quite a lot on the effect of unsustainable farming, and especially on like chemicals that are used, for example, herbicides, glyphosate. There have been a lot of like large movements about that, in particular on the protection of bees. I think that seems to be like the most common area people rally around. And that has actually led to some political impacts as well, especially in the southern German states of Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, even though the name might be a bit complicated for US people. There have been actually laws being implemented as a consequence of the citizens' movements. And in Baden-Württemberg, which is my state, for example, the government now targets a substantial reduction in chemical pesticide use, targets a 30 to 40% share of organic agriculture in overall agriculture, and will increase protected biotopes. So I think we see that actually the impact of people getting engaged is there. But I think beyond that topic, to be honest, the awareness of linkages between climate change and biodiversity loss in particular is not that high. And it's mostly focused on developments abroad. I think people are aware of, rainforests and other ecosystems being impacted. But I think, what happens back at home is not something that's really much on their mind. But I think that might also just be due to the very limited biodiversity that we have left in Central Europe after centuries of intensive farming and industrialization. And I think at the current point in time, many efforts actually focus on preserving what we call cultural landscape. So an example for that might be that in my region, you have, for example, piles of rock that people have been building up over, probably centuries. And they actually build the basis for new ecosystems that are now crucial for endangered species. And there's a lot of preservation efforts going into that direction to preserve kind of this cultural landscape that we've created over the time. But I think, as I said, we have to work on the awareness when it comes to climate change.
Thank you. I guess after this panel, we maybe see the numbers of people Googling where Baden-Württemberg is going up. But no, thanks for these insights on the regional politics in Germany and Europe. Katie, I don't know, would you like to come in and share a little bit on your background and how people where you are perceive this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think something that's really important to point out here is that Native American populations have noticed the biodiversity loss, and they have been loud and talked about this, but they have been ignored by the general American public. And the first step to solving this and understanding that biodiversity is a problem is to listen to our Native Americans and listen to our elders who have noticed this. For young people in the United States, our entire lives have been marked by biodiversity. So maybe it's not as clear to us, and living through climate change and the information age at once can be very overwhelming. So I think it's hard for people to know everything and to notice everything. And that just makes it even more important to take the time to listen to our Native Americans and to our elders and give them that respect. And here I would like to promote the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmer. She is a Native American elder who speaks very eloquently and clearly about biodiversity loss and what it means for us. So that's some further reading that we can do.
Thank you, Katie. That's indeed a super important point you're raising there about the role of Indigenous people and also how good of a job they are doing in preserving and understanding ecosystems. So maybe that should give us some food for thought as to how we acknowledge them and their lands, as they are often the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And that kind of brings us to the next question that I would like to address to you, which is, do you think social justice depends on environmental or climate justice? And if so, how and why? And I would like to start with Roman.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. That's maybe also why we're here. We see that climate change has direct impacts on especially vulnerable societies in the global south, and especially on societies that depend on their environment for their livelihoods and that are impacted by droughts, flooding, and the decay of ecosystems, for example, of coral reefs. And we also see that people are already being displaced by climate change. And I think that's something that everyone needs to be aware of. At the same time, I think, and that is kind of the difficult point, we also need to acknowledge that growth in the traditional sense might still be necessary to overcome poverty on the global scale for some countries. And we've seen, for example, when we look at developments in Southeast Asia and East Asia, that the growth that we've seen there has helped people out of poverty, but has also had terrible impacts on the environment and on the climate. So I think what we really need to look into is how can we overcome global poverty and global injustice without destroying the environment further? And how can we actually make sure that the development and the growth we need to see is sustainable, and I think that has a lot to do with environmental regulation. It has a lot to do with changing consumption patterns and a very broad transition that we need not only in our countries but as a global society.
Thanks for describing this challenge that exists between economic growth, poverty, and the environment. I think that's really insightful. Katie, what do you have to say on this topic of social justice, environment justice?
I think the root of many of the problems in social injustice and climate injustice is the same. And it is a culture that is obsessed with profit and obsessed with this idea of growth and efficiency. This drive for greed is the same drive that led us to enslave our fellow humans and the same drive that has us dumping waste into water, the water that we drink. I don't think we can accomplish climate justice without discussing what we have done to our fellow humans and discussing the root of this problem. So I actually think that climate justice depends on social justice. I think the global South, Indigenous people, BIPOC folks, and the LGBTQ community, they know firsthand what this monoculture of greed does to our fellow humans. And therefore, they're going to better understand what it looks like in the environment. So centering them and giving them power and resources, that's what's going to lead us out of here. So I think it's actually that climate justice depends on social justice.
Thanks. That's a very strong argument you made there. That was indeed, that provides a lot of food for thought. And I don't know if Lena, what you have to say kind of can add on this, or if you can relate to this, please come in and share what you have to say.
Yeah, actually, I'm very happy Kati talked about Indigenous communities, because this is the example I wanted to give. I really think that one justice cannot be achieved without the other, right? It's really global. And sometimes I think it has been forgotten, especially in conservation area, and human action has been seen as bad intrinsically. So it has meant that we have created those protected areas, those national parks, and just excluded everybody that was there, regardless of what they were doing. And it included indigenous people. And of course, maybe to some extent they need, so if we're talking about forests, to deforest a piece of land to grow their food, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that they might need those natural resources. And actually by trying to protect nature as superior value, you kind of, you can really undermine social causes, such as access to natural resources for vulnerable populations. So I think really one cannot be thought without the other. And if it's the case, it can really have the detrimental effects on already affected populations.
Indeed. Danielle, do you have anything to add on this topic?
Yes, I agree with previous speakers about the interdependence of the two topics, social justice and climate justice. And as we address these issues, I think we all need to, I think we recognize too that although we're all impacted by climate change, similar to we're all impacted by COVID-19, for example, frontline communities composed, primarily of BIPOC folks are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And then similarly on a global scale, again, those in the global South, which are primarily composed of people of color, are again disproportionately impacted by climate change, though in many cases they aren't the ones contributing the most to climate change. So I think climate change and the response are political, religious, gendered, monetized. And I think in that way, that necessarily equates it to being social justice issues.
Thank you. We're coming towards the end of this panel, but there's one really important question that I would like to address to you, which is, how do you think we can practically achieve climate justice? And Danielle, if you would like to right away take it again, that would be great.
Yes, just going back to what I said, just again, centering frontline and BIPOC communities and identifying community-based assets, because communities of color and those disproportionately impacted understand what they need, and they just need the resources to accomplish these goals for climate justice and social justice. And I think a lot of times moving from a food apartheid, for example, to food sovereignty, is equated to moving from industrial agriculture to sustainable agriculture, and where communities have access and autonomy to what and how they eat and what they, and the food that they grow, for example.
Thanks again, Danielle. Would you like to add something to this, Lena?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think we all have a role to play and we can to some extent contribute to this. So if you have the opportunity to look what's happening around in your area, so for example, community gardening, I think amazing examples were given there, or just giving, talks in the school you attended, or go to walks, or volunteer in a charity shop. There's many ways that you can do that. And also I think now in the area of social media, we can really take advantage of it. So follow some influencers that are dealing with this issue to inform and share some content yourself. I think that can be a good start, not very time demanding, and it can have a great impact.
Thanks for sharing these very practical and easy examples as to how every one of us can get a little bit more informed and make some better decisions. Katie, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, I'm going to keep it simple because I think the solution really is simple. I think this is a very broad, complex topic. We're not going to be able to solve every single thing. Find what you are passionate about and commit to it. Commit to that one small thing because it'll make a difference, and commit to it locally. Find ways to do what you want to do in your hometown, in your backyard, wherever you live, and your small changes will make a big difference. Just make sure you're passionate about it and make sure that it's local.
Thanks. That's a really humbling and beautiful comment, in fact. Roman, can you add anything to this? Do you agree?
I mean, to be honest, there have been so many great things that have been said, and I really agree with all of them. I think the most important thing is to get active in any way you can. That can be on the local level through a campaign you want to support. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. And I think what we can also all do is to be aware of how we consume, what we consume, what our impact our consumption has, and also maybe boycott some companies, you know, that you know about, that they are terrible and they are doing terrible things. I think it's not a secret. So I think, you know, there's a lot you can do. You can start with the small steps and then go big if you have the time and energy to commit. But I think there is a lot of opportunity out there.
Thank you, Roman. Okay, so now we're really approaching the end of this panel, and I would like every one of you to share like one last message you would like the audience to really take away from this conversation tonight. Katie, please go ahead.
One of my all-time favorite quotes is by Margaret Mead, and it is, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever does." Support Bartram's Garden, support programs that you believe in. Take a walk, get to know your environmental habitat, get to know the native flowers and the native foods. Have a local farmer and support farmers who are doing the right thing. Every little thing you do is impactful, and you have the power to really do something. But you know what? Also have grace with yourself, because this is a big and complex problem, and it's going to take collaboration to fix it.
Thank you. Roman?
Yeah, get active. Find the way you can contribute. Start a local project. Take to the streets. Make your voice heard. Get out there. There's a lot you can do from big to small. Just, you know, start to make a difference. And I think many of the issues are systemic. So we need broad societal pressures that things actually start to change. So yeah, get out there.
Thank you. Danielle?
Yes, I have this quote by a Japanese farmer and philosopher by many respects, Masanobu Fukuoka. He wrote One Straw Revolution, which I think is another great book. Should add to your reading list. He stated, "If one fathoms deeply their own neighborhood and the everyday world in which they live, the greatest of worlds will be revealed." And I think we often look to travel, which is a privilege, and to discover the world, which I think is also valid, but we often neglect the wonders, what we can find in our own backyards. And I think, like you said, get active in your own backyards, get active locally. And I think that's a great way that we all should, you know, strive towards right now.
Thank you for sharing this quote. Lena, do you want to finish this?
Yeah. Oh, a lot of pressure on me. Yeah, I think there are really infinite ways you can engage with this cause. We all have different resources and amount of time we can dedicate to that, but you can join an organization. We have given some example, but I think even the simple fact of changing some personal habits, so the way that you eat, that you dress, or even that you travel, can make a change, and it can also inspire your families and friends, and this already makes a big difference.
Thank you, Lena. And thanks to all of you, in fact, for this inspiring conversation on environmental activism, awareness about biodiversity loss, and all the interlinkages between social and climate justice. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you and hearing all these different points of views and arguments. And I hope that everyone in the audience can take something away for them tonight, be it a book recommendation, a little tip for their garden, or Googling Baden-Württemberg. No, there's so many different ways you can get active, and I hope this was as inspiring for you as it was for me. So thanks to you, Katie, Danielle, Lena, and Roman. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. And also thanks to No Space Productions and Bartram's Garden and everyone else who is making this live stream event and these amazing internship programs possible. So I hope you will enjoy the rest of the program, and feel free to reach out to me or anyone else of the panelists, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the program. Ciao.
So what is GCE? Generation Climate Europe is the largest coalition of European youth-led networks pushing for stronger action from the EU on climate and environmental issues. Our member organizations represent more than 460 national youth organizations and more than 20 million young Europeans. And our aim is to create a platform to allow young people to have their voices heard and engage towards a just and green transition in Europe. Thereby, we follow our guiding principles of being youth-led, democratic, evidence-based, intersectional, diverse, and human rights-based.
Thank y'all so much. We are super blessed to be joined by such bright minds in this industry. So actually a quick chat check-in. Had y'all ever heard about biodiversity loss before this panel? Did you learn something new? Drop it in the chat and start that conversation with your community. To help continue this amazing work, we are raising funds for the Bartram Gardens Youth Internship Program, and you, yes you, can make the biggest splash by donating right here in the chat. There is a link to donate, and every cent, every dollar, every share matters. So join us, drop in the chat, click that link, and share it off to 5 friends. Next up, we are joined by City Planter for a potting demo. Let's check that out.
Hey everyone, I'm Suzanne. I'm here at City Planter. We are a houseplant and garden store in Northern Liberties here in Philadelphia, and I'm going to talk about propagation today. Propagation is an awesome way to make more plants out of one plant. It is the process of taking a fully rooted plant, taking material from that plant, rooting it so that you have more than one plant. It is an amazing way to share plants with friends. It's an amazing way to make a bunch of plants out of one plant, and it's also a way to save a plant. If you have a plant that's struggling, if it's got root rot, you can save the healthy part of that plant by taking cuttings and rooting it. There's a few kinds of propagation that we're going to be talking about today. One is taking plantlets or babies from plants that make those already, and you can take those and root them. Another one is taking stem cuttings, rooting those in water and soil, and then having a new plant. And then another is leaf cuttings from succulents. That's its own whole process. There's one other way to propagate, and that's tissue culture. That's done in a lab. We're not going to do that today. So the first kind of propagation we're going to be talking about today is plantlets or plant babies. You might have heard either way. There are some plants that make offshoots, and you can take those little offshoots and plant them to form new plants. One of those is a sansevieria, also known as snake plant. So you can see here that you've got this big mother plant, and then it's produced this little offshoot here. This is connected with a big stem underneath the soil. So if you go in with some sharp scissors and you snip that, you've got a new baby plant here. You can stick that new baby plant into some fresh, dry soil. You want to make sure that soil is dry so that the roots will be encouraged to spread out and look for water, and that you avoid the threat of root rot, and then this will grow into its own little plant. The other kind of plant that's really popular that you can take babies from is the Pilea peperomoides, also called the friendship plant. This makes a ton of little babies here, and you just do the same thing. Go in with sharp scissors, you find the root that connects it to the mother plant, snip it, and then the plant should come out. This one actually has a good amount of roots on it right here. You can see that it already has. And then you can stick that into fresh, dry soil. You can mist the top if you want, but you do want to keep the soil dry. Don't keep it drenched all the time, and that'll encourage root growth. And then you've got a new plant. The second kind of propagation we're going to be talking about today are stem cuttings. And you can do that with a vining plant. and cut along the stem. You can also do that with a lot of tree-like plants that are indoors, ones with woody stems and stuff like that. Sometimes the tree plants don't always take to propagation, but it's worth a try. So here's a plant called a Dracaena. This is a plant that gets really tall, and this has been snipped along its trunk. And then it's just been stuck in water, and you can see all these roots have grown. This is ready to plant in soil because it has a nice root system. And that's as easy as pie for that. If you have a plant where maybe you have some root rot, part of it has died away, that's a great way to save it. The other is in vining plants. And there are some specific things you want to keep in mind when you're doing this. When you take a cutting of a vining plant, you want to make sure to have a node. A node is a little bump along the stem, and that's where the roots are going to come from. So if you were just going to take the leaf of this and put it in water, it wouldn't root and turn into a new plant. But if you were to take it from down here where you have a couple of these bumps, that's where the roots are going to form. Then when you have a nice tangle of roots, you're ready to plant. Sometimes it'll take a while and you might have just one little root. Just be patient until you have a lot of roots going on, and then you can plant it in soil. The last kind of propagation we're going to be talking about today, and my personal favorite, is succulent leaf propagation. Succulents are desert plants, so they have evolved incredible ways to sustain themselves in nature and propagate themselves without the need of much water. So you see they have these really fleshy leaves. I've got this succulent here that I'd like to propagate. It's a little stretched out. I don't love the way it's looking. So you can take a leaf, gently twist it off of the plant, and put it on top of some fresh, dry soil. You want to keep the soil dry so that the roots spread out and look for water in the soil. Eventually, this little scab will dry over, and then it'll start to form roots into the soil, and then it'll form its own baby plant. Now you can do this on top of soil. It's going to make it a lot easier, but these succulents will actually do that without any soil at all. We've got this little jade leaf that fell off. It's the same plant as here. It just fell on the counter here at City Planter, and you'll see that it's formed its own root system and its own mini baby plant. So you'll see these leaves eventually, and it'll take a while, form a little baby plant like this. It's going to use up all the water in this leaf, and then this will dry up, and when this leaf is dried up, it's ready to plant. All right, that is all the propagation advice I have for you today for houseplants, but you can propagate a lot of things in your garden as well. There's a lot of benefits to it. Propagation creates an exact clone of the plant before, so if you have a plant that you really like some unique aspect of it, propagation is a perfect way to preserve that. Again, we are City Planter here in Northern Liberties in Philadelphia. We just wanted to thank No Space Productions for the opportunity to do this today. And I wanted to thank all of you guys for tuning into Root Rot and helping out Bartram's Garden.
How beautiful was that, y'all? You can actually visit City Planter in Northern Liberties at 814 North 4th Street. A quick chat check-in, and this is a no judgment zone. How many plants have y'all killed? Because I know I don't have the greenest thumb, but I do have some good friends who support me in getting them back to health. For our last segment of the night, we have an original song written by Dante Robinson just for Root Rot, recorded by Up and Over. Welcome, Dante.
Hey, I'm Dante Robinson. I'm going to be playing a song. Thank you guys so much for supporting Bartram's Garden. This is the It's Lit Family Band.
Mother Earth, is it too late? still pray. There's got to be something.
I want to invite you all to come to the garden. This is a place in Philadelphia where you can find snakes. This is a place where the frogs jump in and out of the pond. This is a place where the fish that you could catch on the river is amazing.
This is a very, very special place.
It's extraordinary how this garden has become this beloved space during this pandemic.
We have these amazing projects. We have the Nest, which is the early childhood learning facility. We have this boathouse we're going to develop. We have this mussel hatchery we're creating.
We have great things going on here. We're really excited that you're here to celebrate with us. If you've been here before, you'll always find something new that'll be interesting to you.
We are now very much part of the Southwest community, and the Southwest community wants to welcome you here. My name's Charles Lomax. I'm president of the board of Bartram's Garden.
Hi, I'm Maitrey Roy.
I want you guys to come on and join our family here.
Welcome to Bartram's Garden.
Y'all, that has been Root Rot. Thank you so much for tuning in and your generous support. This would not have been able to happen without y'all. And who else are we saying thank you to, y'all?
Thank you so much to our sponsors. Thank you to our promotional partners for helping us get the word out.
And also, thank you to all of you for tuning in and donating. It means so much to us that we were able to create this event and benefit Bartram's Garden Youth Internship Programs. Thank you to all the incredible contributors who made this event possible, all the talent, all the time that went into this. We will not forget that. And yeah, I'm Andrew from Rubber.
I'm Drew from No Space.
I'm Scarlett Estelle from Your Dreams, and that's been Root Rot.